Well, it seems I've misplaced my hair. Stick around. We'll talk. Everybody, and welcome to another episode of Chemo and Cocktails, the only show on the internet about cancer and classic tiki drinks. I'm your host, Wayne. You may know me from previous hair loss incidents like the frontal lobe development of 1994, the great stressors of 2014, and the let us never speak of this again haircut of 1987. It's been a week. Actually, it's been 2 weeks. So first of all, let me start with an apology and just say that I'm sorry that we didn't post any videos last week. And frankly, I just haven't felt like it. I'll be honest. I know I'm supposed to do that. It's like a YouTube thing where you're supposed to post regularly. But, since the live stream where we shaved off my head, I just haven't felt much like shooting or editing anything. But we're getting around to it now. So let's kind of recap what's happened since then. First of all, if you didn't join in for the live stream of shaving my head, that was a ton of fun. And, we had set a goal of raising $500 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We ended up raising $1,500. It's amazing how generous people will be when an idiot like me is being humiliated live on the internet. That's the only thing I can conclude. Or maybe you're just all generous people. There's that. That's another option. Thank you guys again. It's incredible, and it's incredibly humbling how many people tuned in to watch that and how many people continued giving for several days afterwards. If you haven't seen that, check out the link, and it's a hoot. I'll just leave it at that. The next day after we shaved off my hair, which, by the way, is starting to grow back a little bit. So I've got this little bit of beach fuzz that I'm having to maintain. But it's really patchy. So I can tell that even if I let it go or if I hadn't shaved it all off, my head would be just really patchy because there's bald spots and thin spots and other places where it's growing back fine. You can see I've still got a little bit of facial hair, but I can just reach up here and easily pull it. Well, that was a cat hair, but most of the time I can just easily reach up and pull it out. So I had chemo the very next day after we shaved my head. That was round 2. So, signing up again to be the human pincushion. What I mean by it in this instance was it took not 1, not 2, but 3 nurses to access my port, 3 different attempts. First time they go in, the thing rolls out of the way, and what happened there can only be described as a stabbing. I was stabbed in the chest. So then they pulled that out. Got a different nurse to come in. She tried it. She had her little tricks. No good. Third nurse came in. This time it was the charge nurse for the floor. She finally accessed it, but then they couldn't get any blood return. So they had me do this whole thing, and they had to do this a couple of different times where they had me like laying all the way back prone, and I had, this hand up here, and they made me turn my head and cough. And, as a guy, anytime somebody asks me to turn my head and cough, I get a little nervous. But there was no groping. Everybody was on their best behavior. And soon blood came, drugs were flowing freely, no major reactions this time. Savannah went with me on this one, and she got to hang out with me, and it was actually much shorter and, no big deal. So we were in and out of there in like 5 hours, which compared to the 8 or 9 of the previous time was pretty great. But the days after, the biggest thing I noticed, I wasn't, there was still the same low-level nausea that I had last time. Didn't have the digestive issues nearly that I had the previous time. But there was the stink. This was the big thing that I didn't experience the first time around that I was extremely sensitive to. I just was aware that every pore and orifice of my body was just oozing this chemical smell. I felt like everything I did, from breathing to sweating to whatever, just had this horrific smell to it. And then you start combining that with, these Febreze scented trash bags that we had and using Microban to clean everything inside. And it's pretty clear I'm going to have some smell aversions when this whole thing was over. And then there was this red-orange gelatinous discharge that is not exactly the picture of normality. I won't go into where it came from, but let's just say it was several places. Yeah. So my bathroom basically became a toxic waste dump. Or maybe a toxic waste dump is what I did when I went to the bathroom. I'll think about that and get back to you. Other than that, I'm feeling pretty great. There's just the fatigue. And this is why We haven't shot anything in the last week. Frankly, you know, I have a little bit of activity and I'm done. You know, if I work a full 8 or 9 hour day, even sitting here at the computer, because I'm not going out and doing production, but even with this, just sitting here and working intently all day long, editing or writing, I'm completely exhausted by the end of the day. I usually have to take a brief power nap after lunch, end up sometimes taking a nap after work as well, and then I just kind of lie on the sofa because I'm so exhausted. I thought maybe that I would be feeling better by this point because we're, you know, 2 weeks out from when I got my last infusion. But just yesterday, or 2 days ago, was it 2 days ago? No, it was yesterday. Went out and tried to do some yard work, and you know, Cooper and I scooped leaves out of the pool. And then we went outside and we bagged up some trimmings because we had some guys from our church came over. Oh, man, such a blessing. Came over and trimmed up all of our hedges and our. We have these really tall, 4 tall holly trees right in front of the house. And I usually am up on a ladder trimming those this time of year, but I can't do that right now. So they came over and did that. But Cooper and I went out and just bagged up all the trimmings. We were outside between the pool and bagging up the trimmings for an hour. By the end of it, I was completely exhausted, panting, drenched in sweat, and my heart was beating at about 133, 135 beats per minute. I had to take 2 naps yesterday afternoon just to recover from that 1 hour of doing yard work. So any thoughts I have of trying to work out or get anything ambitious done with the tiki bar or any of that, it's out the window now because I simply don't have the strength, I don't have the energy, I don't have the endurance. And I got to tell you, this is driving me crazy more than anything else I've experienced because I am not very good at just sitting around. I like to stay busy. I always have projects going on. There's always something I want to do. And the idea that I don't have the energy to do it is just, it's eating at me. It really is. So I'm having to learn to slow down. I'm having to learn to be patient with myself. So, you know, maybe I'll binge some new series or watch some movies I haven't seen or read a few books, maybe write something. I got to find something that is low energy in a way that can satisfy my desire to be creative and productive. But yeah, that's it. That's why we haven't done any videos. But that's pretty much a recap. There's really nothing else to report. I'm bald. I'm tired. You know, I'm and if I go out and do yard work, I start panting like an overweight middle-aged asthmatic. I am an overweight middle-aged asthmatic, but that's beside the point. Anyway, so that's pretty much it on the chemo side of this thing, a recap of the week or 2 weeks in cancer. So I think now it's time to go get freaky with the tiki. But first, here's your moment of non-spiration. All right, we are at the bar, but we are obviously not in the bar space. We are in the garage. There's a reason for that. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, we're going to start with our cocktail. We're going to make what's called the Palace Court Daiquiri. This is one invented by Jeff Beachbum, who uses, you know, created the app that we use on the show here. This one is pretty simple. Again, I'm trying to keep things simple. I want to go with some citrus in my drinks because it's good for the immune system. Also trying to limit the number of syrups and limit the overall alcohol by volume. So we're going to start off with 1 ounce of fresh lime juice, which is usually roughly 1 lime. So I'm just not even going to measure it. I'm just going to juice 1 lime. That was a particularly violent lime, apparently. Wow, I'm not sure I've been checked out on this equipment properly. This one is, this is not my better juicer. I got this one in some kind of cocktail kit. It's not my favorite. Now we're talking. Now we're getting some lime juice in there. All right, cool. That's good enough. So then we're going to want 1/2 ounce of simple syrup. Not that sophisticated, complicated syrup, just the simple stuff. 1/2 ounce on this guy is right there. Easy enough, bottom line. which is probably about as much sugar as I'd want in a drink right now, because look at me, I don't need it. And then we're going to use Barbancourt 8-year rum, which is a Haitian rum. We need 1.5 ounces of that. Do I hear a cat crying?
Yeah, it's pineapple.
Pineapple, the tiki cat. She's wanting to join us for this little episode next time. I don't like letting her get out here. She finds a way to somehow climb up in the garage and then work her way through the drop ceiling of the basement, which is just a total nightmare. All right, so then we're going to just shake that with ice cubes. And strain it into our cocktail glass, which is nicely bedazzled with lime juice from the exploding lime earlier. Look at that. That's a pretty drink. Wow. This is another one I've never had. You guys are pushing me to new boundaries. Let's see what this tastes like. Ooh. Ooh. Mmm. Nice job, Mr. Barry. All right, I'm going to clean up real quick. Then we're going to get to our topic of the day. And our topic of the day, the reason I want to go ahead and make my drink is so I can just sip on it while we're talking about this. We're going to talk about what goes into a tiki bar. And when I mean that, I don't mean it metaphorically. I mean it literally. What are the things that you put in a tiki bar to make it a tiki bar? So let me clean up a little bit and we'll get right to that. Okay, so the first category of things we want to talk about, and this is a technical term, so don't go throwing this around unless you really know what you're talking about, is lamps and hangy thingies. The key to any great tiki bar, or at least the ones that I've been in, I'm always struck by the things that are suspended or hanging from the ceiling. Now, sometimes they can be huge things. It could be like a big outrigger canoe or a giant ship's anchor or something like that. But usually it's the lamps. There are so many cool tiki lamps out there. And I'm going to save my best one for later in this video. But let's look at some of the things that I've collected actually over time. So this is just like a little candle lantern. That's kind of a reproduction thing. It's okay, but I think I'll probably tiki this guy up a little bit, maybe add some bamboo or lahala matting or something to it. I love this one, which is made from, gosh, it looks like just driftwood and some sort of a woven material. But I think with this one, I'm going to, if you can tell, there's a structure inside there. I'm going to wrap that in tapa pattern fabric, like a Fiji tapa pattern, and then rig it up with a light fixture with something kind of like this, where it has the rope wrapped cord, and get a lamp down in there. That way I can just control it and probably do a smart bulb so that I can control it along with everything else. And then something I just absolutely adore are Japanese glass floats. Now this one is beautiful, but it is a reproduction. It's still pretty heavy though. This one, believe it or not, I got at Bucky's gas station in Loxley or Robertsdale, Alabama. I forget which city limit it's in. This one is an actual vintage used, properly used Japanese glass float. I picked this one up at the world's longest yard sale. I think we got this in Kentucky. Is that right, Cooper?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've got a bunch of these smaller reproduction ones too. I've got 5 or 6 of these. So once we get the ceiling up in the bar, those will be some of the first things that go up. And then I'll probably find a way. Now, a lot of people will drill into these and then sandblast the inside of them so they're frosted and then rig them up for lamps. But it can be really difficult and you end up, in a lot of times, cracking the float. And I just don't want to run that risk. But I may try to find a way to maybe put strip lights inside the rope or hide some kind of a fixture that punches through this in some way, just so that we can really bring out the colors of the glass. I've also got this guy, little bamboo wind chime. So that'll be fun. That'll go up as well. But again, it's about, a lot of it's about layering. So, you've got whatever textures you've put on the actual ceiling itself, and there should be layers of texture there, and then all these things hanging down. I've got a few other lamps, but they sort of fall in some other categories. So let's move on to one of those other categories now that technically this would fall into as well, and that's nautical items. Okay, so when we were talking about lamps, I forgot this guy. And this is a small one, but puffer. Let me try that again. I forgot this guy right here. It's a puffer fish lamp. Every tiki bar has to have a puffer fish lamp. This is a small one. Some of them are huge. I'd like to get a bigger one, but this guy is lit and got a little color changing LED in there. The next category we're going to talk about is nautical or trader items. These are things that kind of evoke the idea of, you know, merchant and seamen traveling the South Seas, trading with locals. So it'd be things that you might find in a shipwreck or things that they have traded for along the way. So this is mainly the nautical stuff that we've got here. So you've got everything from old ropes, nautical style ropes, fishing nets. I've also got a section of fishing net around here somewhere with rope and some floats on it. These old wooden buoys, this kind of thing, whether it's reproduction or the real deal, those are great. Wooden pulleys, block and tackles, these are fantastic. And when we were doing the world's longest yard sale this past summer, I had to be stopped from buying every one of these that I found. I did get these two though during that. Barrels, you know, you've seen us several times on the set. We have a small rum barrel that we use sometimes. It's outside at the bar, or something like this, like an old style whiskey jug. That's a great one too, because you can just imagine a sailor turning that up for his rum. Ship's wheels. Ship's wheels are fantastic. So I've got a couple of different sizes here, and then I've got a larger one, this guy here, which I'm actually going to turn into a chandelier. So we will suspend that from the ceiling, and then we will use some of these, you know, braided rope fixtures. Those will be intertwined through here, hanging down, and then we'll have some bamboo shades on it with smart bulbs, and this will be hanging using chain or rope from the ceiling. That's going to be really cool. You know, and I mentioned tapa fabric earlier. What I was talking about is this stuff right here. So you can just imagine, you know, these sailors traveling around and trading with the locals and ending up with some of these exotic fabrics to adorn their various items. Here's a brass, or I guess it's probably copper, solid copper flagon. That's cool too. And then this guy, this is another lamp. This is an actual lamp from a ship. This one, I would hang it, but it's got a broken Fresnel lens here, but that actually works really well for me. And I've done this on a previous episode. I can just wedge a light bulb through that opening there, let it sit here on the bar, and then have a flickering effect going on with the smart bulb. So that's kind of a rough idea of the nautical items. So let's move on to our next category. Okay, the next category we want to talk about are tiki adjacent items. These are things that come from outside of the geographic region that tiki is sort of dedicated to. So in case you don't know, tiki bars are really all about the South Pacific. So there's three main regions that it covers. There's Polynesia, which stretches from, you know, New Zealand over to Easter Island and up to Hawaii in sort of a big triangle here. And then there's Melanesia, which is this little sort of kidney bean shaped area right in here that's southeast of the Philippines, and that includes places like, referring to my notes, New Guinea, Papua New Guinea is in there, stretches over to Fiji, includes the Solomon Islands, and then Micronesia, which is just above that, east of the Philippines, but it includes Marshall Islands and places like Palau. So all of this area here is what tiki celebrates, all of these, and they all have a lot of cultural similarities that are distinctly different from what you start getting into once you get into Indonesia and the Philippines and on up into Southeast Asia or further down and west into Australia. So as tiki, and it's sort of an idealized version of the South Pacific. It started really during the 30s and the 40s when travel overseas was becoming more commonplace and people were sort of celebrating these exotic islands that they could now visit and the amazing tales that they were hearing that were all, of course, completely exaggerated. And then it really exploded after World War II when you have all these sailors and soldiers and airmen coming back who had been in the Pacific theater, and when they weren't facing the horrors of war, were taking R&R on these gorgeous island paradises. So they wanted to relive a little bit of that back in their humdrum, boring lives in Middle America, and thus the tiki bar was born. So these items, these tiki adjacent items, are from those places outside of that range. So like in this case, these are velvet paintings. Now velvet paintings are very common in tiki bars, but these, as you can see, they are more Asian, sort of a Southeast Asian influence. These look like maybe junks that you would see in Hong Kong. Here's another one here. And someone gifted these to me, and I'll probably just reframe these in some bamboo frames, but they're definitely tiki adjacent. You got sailing ships out on the ocean with a little bit of an Indian Ocean influence more than Pacific, but it would definitely find a place in my bar. And also, I'm a firm believer that if somebody gives you a gift for your bar, try to find a way to incorporate it, because I think that makes it even more inviting when people know that they can have a part in creating the look of your bar. Here we've got a Moroccan-style lamp that I picked up a while back at an antique shop. And I've seen a few pictures of classic tiki bars where they would have these Moroccan lamps in there. And again, from the Middle East and North Africa, completely outside the realm of tiki, but you can sort of imagine, like if you create a backstory for your bar, if it's created by a shipwreck from adventurers and traders who have landed there, but after they've done a tour of the world and they've picked up little bits and pieces all over the place. This guy right here, I'm not even sure where he's from. I've heard some people say he looks African, but there's also some elements here that do suggest a Polynesian or maybe even a Maori influence. It was labeled tiki when I bought it at the World's Longest Yard Sale 3 or 4 years ago. I just lost a light. So I picked this guy up right here at the World's Longest Yard Sale 3 years ago, I think, Cooper. And this was the guy, it was labeled as tiki on there. I don't know, and it had been set up to be a lamp, and we took all the base and the little lamp post out of the top of it. I don't know where it's from. Some people say it looks African, but I can also see, like in the garb, maybe some Polynesian or Maori influence, but the hat definitely feels more African. Don't really know where it's come from. There's no markings on it anywhere, no maker's marks or anything to indicate. Probably a tourist piece, and it looks like he probably held something some point, who knows, a spear or something. These are kind of just louvered on there, but this guy, since he was labeled tiki, this is really what sort of inspired me to start looking into the possibility of creating a tiki bar with my patio. So whether he's tiki or not, he's definitely tiki adjacent, and he's definitely going to have a place of honor in the bar. So so that's what we have as far as the sort of tiki adjacent things. I don't have a ton of stuff that exists outside that world because I'm trying to stay very focused with the nautical maritime elements, sort of the trader feel, and really, really trying to focus as much as I can. And it's difficult in a place like Birmingham, Alabama, to find what you need. But that classic sort of tiki bar look. Speaking of that, let's move on to the category that's most important, and that's, of course, tikis. So as we move into our final category, we have to ask the question, what is a tiki bar without tikis? Well, it's not a tiki bar. Maybe a bar. It could be a tropical bar, a Polynesian bar, could be a pirate bar, a lot of different things, but it is most definitely not a tiki bar without tikis. I am very much a purist about this particular thing. I think everyone should interpret their bar and interpret tiki in their own way, but it does have to have those core elements. There's an old saying in filmmaking and writing that you have to know the rules to break the rules. I feel the same way about a tiki bar. It's sort of like you've got to start with the solid foundation of what a tiki bar most definitely is. Then you can start bringing other things into it. Some people bring Star Wars elements into theirs, and I'm probably going to do that. I'm looking at getting some of the custom mugs from Oka's Cantina at Galaxy's Edge. Or people bring in mid-century elements, and I've just recently picked up some siesta-ware glasses that are most definitely mid-century tiki and very nicely combine those two worlds. But you got to have the tikis. So let's talk about the tikis I have, and this is really the weakest area of my bar at the moment because I'm tending, first of all, they're just hard to find around here. Secondly, I'm being a little bit picky about it. There are things I like and things I don't like. For example, this guy right here I picked up on Marketplace. I've done all this collecting, by the way, since the onset of the pandemic. So I've mostly found things on Facebook Marketplace. I've picked up a few things other places, but that's where the majority of what I have has come from. This guy, I'm not crazy about the paint job on him. It's sort of what a lot of people call clown tiki. So I'm probably either going to completely remove the bright colors or dull them down a good bit with some antiquing wax which is something Cooper and I do a lot of with his costumes and other props that we've done. So I'm going to bring this more in line with a weathered, sort of natural look that I would like it to have. But it's a fun tiki, and I picked him up for $5. Can't pass that up. And then this guy here, I got for 15 from the same person. I went to get this one, hadn't even seen the listing for this one. She's like, so you don't want the big one? This guy is, what, almost 6 feet tall. This thing is huge because it's standing on the floor. That's why I have it in front of the bar. The lady that I bought these from, she said she picked them up in Florida 30 some years ago. So they're definitely older. So they at least date back to the 80s. They could be older than that. I'm not really sure what their provenance is prior to that, but they came from Florida sometime in the 80s. Who knows before that, but they're mine now. This guy is another marketplace find, and this is something else that falls into this broad category. Is not just tikis, but weapons, shields, masks, other artistic paraphernalia from Polynesia. I don't know for sure where this one came from, but it most definitely gives off a Papua New Guinea vibe. It's very consistent with a lot of the art styles coming out of Papua New Guinea. So this is another one of my favorite pieces. Drove all the way to Gulf Shores, Alabama from Mobile. So I drove like 2 hours out of my way after visiting my dad before coming home just to get this piece. And I've done that with a few other things too. And then this guy right here is a home goods find. And now a lot of people turn their nose up at finding, mass market products. But let me tell you, depending on where you are, it's just going to be easier for a lot of people. If you live in Southern California, you can go to estate sales and find all kinds of incredible vintage tiki items. Maybe that's true in the upper Midwest as well, because I know all through Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, there are a lot of classic tiki bars that existed there through the mid-century, and there's still some paraphernalia about. But man, you get into the deep South and it's just not around. Maybe down in Florida, but not here where we are. So you kind of have to take what you can find. But this guy, I picked up this one and a couple of larger ones, these little sort of concrete or resin Rapa Nui Easter Island heads. So those are cool. You always got to have some moai thrown in the mix. And then this is a replica of the tiki drummers from Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, previously known as Tropical Serenade. So, in a couple of the songs there, these actually come to life and are animated and animatronic little drummers. This one is not animatronic, though I hope to make an animatronic one soon, but we built this, Cooper and I did. So this was 3D printed from wood filament and assembled out of like 6 different pieces and painted by us. One of my absolute favorite pieces that we have in the collection, honestly. So speaking of favorite pieces, now we're going to get to the 2 big ones. These were, again, Facebook Marketplace finds, but they really just stand out above everything else in my collection. Okay, here in front of me are 2 of my absolute favorite pieces. Let's start with this guy. I talked about driving out of the way to get the mask that I showed you a little bit ago. Well, I was in Dothan, Alabama on a shoot, and I drove, I think it was 3 hours out of my way. Instead of coming straight home to Birmingham, I drove over to Pensacola, Florida. I had been talking to the person who had this for sale for months and finally was able to go get it. I picked this up for $35. Now, you can tell I've peeled away the old, there was some tapa fabric, like actual bark cloth here, and I've got some more bark cloth upstairs. So I'm going to restore that, maybe put some new seagrass rope here, and then just secure. There's a few loose shells on here. But this guy right here, it's a lamp, a hanging lamp, and I got to rewire it and get new hangers on it. But these guys were made, I think, pretty much exclusively for tiki bars in the 50s and 60s. I have no idea where this one originally came from. The lady I bought it from said she had bought an older house to flip and that this was hanging in the dining room of the house that she flipped and had been holding on to it for a while. These are hard to come by. I've not seen any others of these for sale. I'm sure there are people who make replicas of them. I have no idea what the real value is, but I know that there are still some classic tiki bars that have been around for decades that have these very fixtures in them. So the light is inside here, inside a fiberglass, sort of a translucent fiberglass housing, and then that glows outward, and all of these shells will just light up and glow from within. I cannot wait to get this one hung up, and I think it's probably going to have a place of honor, right here above the bar once we get it outside, so that everybody that comes up to the bar, there's, it's just a showpiece. The other one, other big purchase that I got, big, it was $15. I got these off Marketplace here locally from someone in the Birmingham area, and it's these wonderful carved oars, Polynesian oars, and they have, these are most definitely Polynesian patterns that are carved into here. It looks very reminiscent of things that you would see coming out of New Zealand or maybe Fiji. I don't know. I'm still learning a lot of the art of those areas, but man, these are just gorgeous. I've never seen anything else like them. They're incredible. So the plan for these is I'll probably do the old thing with crossing these, hang them up above and behind me in the back bar area with the sign for the bar, maybe right in the middle or just below these two. So that's going to be incredible. I cannot wait, again, to get these on display out there. And I got to get them sealed up too, so that both of these things, so they're really weather tight. I don't want to run the risk of damaging these long term just because the bar's outside. But those are fun. I talked a little bit about how hard it can be to find tiki items in your area. And if that's the case, then a lot of times what you can do is you can make your own. Highly recommend this book. This is The Field Guide to Tiki Decorating by Trader Brandon. Brandon is the Imagineer who did all the design work for Trader Sam's at both Walt Disney World and Disneyland. And this is incredible because it's got a lot of really good practical advice on, especially a lot of DIY ideas on creating elements for your own tiki bar. I've actually done a little bit of tiki carving myself, just router carving. We built a fence out around our pool pump and carved all of the posts on that fence. Each one has a different tiki head on it, and those look pretty incredible. I say incredible. I don't want to overstate my ability to carve. They look incredible to me because I didn't know I could do anything even remotely like that, and I'm really happy with the way they turned out. Something else that I'm going to do is kind of a DIY project is the mask that I showed you earlier from the same lady. I got this one, and she had done this paint job on it, which I'm not crazy at all about. So I'm going to strip all the paint off of this. It's most definitely African, but the shape is very reminiscent of some masks I've seen coming out of Fiji and other places in Polynesia. So I'm probably going to go in and really change this thing up. Put some more colorful patterns and things on it, maybe do some frayed rope as hair around the edges, and really just give it a tiki feel. You shouldn't be afraid to try these kinds of things. Take something that maybe isn't tiki and just modify it, make it your own, and bring it more into the tiki aesthetic. I want to mention a couple of other books before we wrap up here, and that's, when you're looking for inspiration, there's tons of great books out there. Pretty much any of Sven Kirsten's books. This one is Tiki Pop, and it really just sort of gets into the pop culture aspect of tiki throughout the decades, but tons of inspirational photos in there of classic and modern tiki bars. Smuggler's Cove by Martin Kate and Rebecca Kate. This is the book about their bar in San Francisco, and I have this mug, and we'll get into talking about tiki mugs in a separate video. But in addition to having some really amazing recipes in here, there are several chapters on the history of tiki and how to decorate your own tiki bar. So this is another great resource. There's also a website called Tiki Central that has been down for a year and a half now. I keep hearing rumors that it's going to come back, but when I was really first starting to look into this and determine on whether this was something I wanted to do, it was that site that really inspired me and got me going. And then there's tons of other YouTubers out there who are doing this stuff and who are much further along in this process than I am and know way more about it than I do. But I hope I've given you enough of a little bit of a primer on tiki decorating, and we'll get a little more into this as I talk about my plans for the bar and what we hope it to be, and hopefully we can see the bar evolve over the course of all these videos. That's it. That's all we've got for now. Thank you guys for tuning in. Come back around next week. We'll talk about something else. Maybe we'll talk tiki mugs next time. But until then, I'll still be bald and you'll still be awesome. Cheers. Bye.